Anybody have questions?
Yeah. At what point do you really have to start getting worried about mold? Is that mostly closer towards harvest, or is that something that can start before the fruit even?
Well, mold, there's different pests and diseases. We have molds and we have mildews to worry about. Our primary mildew is called powdery mildew, which can affect the crop, affects the leaves, and it's starting now. You know, if we're not putting on protectant sprays from roughly the middle of April in this year, every 2 weeks, then we have a problem. And we don't want mildew. The winemakers don't want mildew, the growers don't want to have mildew because it really is a negative impact. Molds can also happen almost any time of the year, depending on what kind of molds there are. The one that you're probably thinking of is botrytis, which is the noble rot. But that can happen early in the season as well as late in the season too, depending if we get a rain event or something. Yeah. Yeah, right now we're all kind of keeping an eye out if we're going to have botrytis cinerea growing in the shoots or in the clusters. And of course we got a whole wide host of insects to worry about and other things, you know. And we have been spraying for European grapevine moth, which is a newcomer to Napa Valley since last September. We've got vine mealybug in some locations. We've got light brown apple moth. We got sharpshooters. You know, we got all these insects to worry about. So, you know, we're on a constantly spraying program right now. In fact, we're going to start putting up our pheromone mating disruptors this week, which is a way to disrupt the males looking for the females to mate. They're mating disruptors. And we'll hang like 200 per acre on the trellis system. So, yeah. There's a lot. It's not just, you know, pruning and picking. There's all the activities in between there, you know, nutrient management and figuring out if you need water or not watering and things like that. So there's a lot to know about.
How much more proactive do you have to be in a season like this than you would in a drier, more typical season? Is it more frequent that you're finding you need to spray? Does it become weekly, daily? How does that change relative to a normal season?
Quite honestly, we're not irrigating. We don't need to put water on because the vines have. We had 3 years of drought prior to 2010. We've had our fill of water for the most part, rainfall water, so the soil profiles are still full at this point, and these vines are not really pulling up that much moisture. So therefore, that's one thing we're not too concerned about is irrigating. The second is we're being more cognizant about mildew starting, about the insect populations, as well as any of the botrytis or the molds that could happen out in the vineyards. Are we putting on more sprays than normal? No. I'm still on a 2-week cycle based on growth. And everything that we do is a preventative. It's not a, you know, it's all. It's right. It is a little bit of reaction to weather because we have to use products that are not going to wash off. We're going to use products that are don't need temperature to act. In other words, sulfur needs 70+ degree days to be active and fuming. So with these cooler days, we don't need to put sulfur in, for example. So yeah, we are doing different management things. And as I mentioned, we have these new pests to worry about. So we're also including insecticides to combat that problem.
That's fascinating that there's even a new insect issue that came about just last year.
Yeah.
And so you guys are having to constantly evolve how you're managing the vineyards.
Absolutely.
It's not as though you can just come up with a recipe and apply it every year.
No, exactly. And that's why I mentioned just a little bit earlier, too, about pulling leaves. We normally wouldn't be concentrating on pulling leaves until a little bit later in the season. But what I'm trying to do is, now that we finished our suckering pass, our mode, and we're pretty much done with that, I'm turning everybody into leaf pullers. And the reason is, as we step over here, the reason is why we need to, I want to encourage leaf pulling is the fact is we need bright sunlight right here on these buds for next year's crop. And if we get this bright sunlight now, this is going to determine our crop for 2011. If these buds are in the dark, so to speak, or covered by leaf tissue, they're not going to receive as much sunlight. So whatever we do in the vineyard is really for the following year. Not so much the immediate, but it's really for the following year. So proactive vineyard management would be out here, and that's what we're going to do, because we need, now May and June is the time that we need this light. Now, we don't know how much light we need, if it's 2 seconds or 3 days worth. The fact is, if we can get sunlight on these buds, these fruit buds right here, then that will help us have a nice crop for 2011. And if we don't get, it's called fruit bud differentiation. It's a long word, but that's what it's all about. The peach growers have to worry about that. The almond growers have to worry about the same sort of thing. That's why in orchards they'll do what they call summer pruning, especially after they're done picking, because they need to get that sunlight in that fruit wood for the following year's crop. I'm doing it now because I'm saying, we have too many cloudy days, too many adverse weather conditions. We're not getting those bright sunny days. We got, a little bit the other day, but the point is, if I can't see in here, how's the sun going to see in here? If you can't see it where my finger is on this little bud, then, very much so, the sun's not going to get there. So what's our crop load going to look for 2011? Chip's going to say, hey, where's my grapes? I'm going to say, well, we didn't do our job, which, in fact, we are going to do our job. We're going to do it better than we've ever done before. What happens is, and I could talk about this now too, is as the fruit is maturing and the sunlight hits this leaf, essentially 100% of the sunlight hits this leaf, but only less than 0.01% of the sunlight actually passes from this leaf to the leaf layer below that. So that's why it's important for us to have an open trellis. And the other reason that we are also removing leaves is so we can get our sprays in here for our insects or our powdery mildew, because we need to protect the fruit. We're not growing leaves for domadas, we're growing fruit. So we need to make sure that we are getting our sprays to penetrate the canopy through and through. So another way to help ensure that is to remove a few leaves and a few laterals early on.